Hey guys, it's Mike from Cornfield Customs coming to you again. This is going to be just a repost video of when I made a paper pattern of the Model A quarter panel that I just posted last week. So if you've already seen that video and you don't want to watch it again, just go ahead and skip this video. But a lot of people couldn't find the video where I made this pattern, so I figured this would be a good opportunity just to go ahead and repost this video. That way it's kind of at the top, right next to where the first video of me taking the paper pattern and laying that out to start the shaping process on a handmade Model A quarter. So again, this is just going to be a repost, and I want to thank you guys for checking it out. Hopefully it's helpful for you guys that haven't seen this video yet, and we will catch you guys on the next one. So thanks for watching. All right, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about what I think is the most important part of metal shaping and metal fabricating, and that's being able to make an accurate paper pattern. And you might ask me like, oh, what does making a paper pattern have to do with actual making a metal part or shaping sheet metal? And surprisingly, it's one of the most important, because we're essentially using the paper pattern to make a roadmap for success. It's going to show us where all our shrinks need to be, our stretches need to be, the overall shape of the part. We can mark all our edges, our flanges, our radii, all of that stuff, and we're going to create a roadmap. So today, I'm going to walk you through the initial pattern making process, and you guys can do this at home. It doesn't take a lot of fancy tools or anything like that. We're going to use paper, which I'll kind of cover, an assortment of magnets, a couple markers, carpenter's pencil, some scissors, and a razor blade. So I'll grab the part and I'll come back over here to the table and we'll start to pattern it and you guys can follow along. All right, so here's the part we're gonna make. This is a quarter panel for a 3031 Model A two-door sedan. So we're going to pattern the whole quarter. I like to make my quarter panels in one piece. You can kind of break this apart into sections for working at home if you want to do all this stuff by hand, if you don't have power equipment or anything like that. So this is the old quarter. It's got some damage here at the bottom. The wheel wells are shot. And when I make the new one, I'm going to want to raise the wheel well up just a little bit. And the back here is kind of damaged. So it's easier just to make new for the application that I'm doing. So this is the part we're going to make. And the first step is we're going to take our paper and we're just going to kind of lay it on top of the panel we're going to make. So the paper is kind of important, but also it has to work for you. This is white auto body masking paper. It's a little bit thinner than the green that you can buy at the paint center. I've got a buddy of mine that likes to use butcher paper, which is even thicker, and then I've got a buddy that uses thinner stuff than what I use. It's almost like a little bit thicker than tissue paper. The white auto body masking paper is kind of what I found that I like the best. So play around with different types of paper, something that's big and in rolls. It can't be thick like chipboard or cardboard because you actually have to be able to put tucks and stuff in it. So just play around with different types of paper and see what you can do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure our paper covers the entire panel. And then we're going to start in the area that has the least amount of shape. So on this quarter, you can see that it's this area. It's a low crown shape, but all the major shaping is done at the back corner. So that's where we're going to start focusing with getting our paper laid down nice and tight. So I'm going to take some magnets, and I like these magnets. You don't want anything like too strong, like an earth magnet, but it needs to be strong enough to stick. I like these. They're about 5/8 to 3/4 round ceramic magnet. I'll have a link to these in the description. I do keep a bunch of these in stock, and I sell them like at my metal shaping classes and stuff. So if you're having a hard time finding magnets and you need some, just check out the link in the bio. So back to our part. I'm going to come over here, and we're going to kind of find our edge, and we're just going to lay a few magnets towards the edge. I kind of stay away from the edge itself, just so when we mark that edge later, it's not in the way. And I'm kind of picky with the way I lay everything out. I try to do everything the same every time. So all my spacing I try to do the same, my pattern I do the same, and it's just repetition. The more you do something, the better you'll get at it, and if you always do it the same way, you should always have very similar results. So what we're trying to do is this low crown area, we're trying to get to lay as flat as humanly possible with as little wrinkles in the paper as possible. So being that this does have a little bit of compound shape, there will be a little bit of wrinkling in the paper, which is okay. You just want to get as much out of that as possible. And if you have to move the magnets around a few times, you just do, and that's all right. So we're just going to work on pulling the paper down, kind of retighten everything as we go. And this is why I don't like them to be too strong. That way, the paper can move just a little bit if you need to without tearing. If you get too strong of a magnet, the paper will tear if you kind of pull on it a little bit. And you really don't want to be tearing your pattern because that'll give you false information. And down here at the bottom where the bead line is, or the body line profile, I'm staying just away from that, again, so when I mark it with a pencil later, I'm not having to move all my magnets around to get in there. All right, so this is where the paper pattern becomes more than just an overall size pattern. So we've got all this area magneted down, which is low crown, and hopefully you guys can see it in the video, but it's laying really nice and flat, other than there being a little bit of extra material due to the panel being high crown. So by reading the edge of our panel here, we have a compound shape. The quarter panel comes this way, and it comes this way. So the paper is going to simulate what the metal does. So it wants to lay flat, but on a compound shape, it won't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to come, we know the shape runs this direction. So we are going to just kind of grab down here at the bottom of our pattern, and we're going to pull perpendicular to the shape that the quarter is. So a lot of times I'll put my finger here and I'll pull down on a corresponding spot just to keep the paper from moving. And I'll pull that down nice and tight, and I'll put a magnet here. So it still looks like the paper's laying flat, and at this point it is. But then if we do the same thing, if we move over a little bit and we pull perpendicular to that same direction we were going, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'll zoom in on it once we get the tucks formed. If I do that, see how it kind of pulls the paper down and it starts to create this tuck here? That's because to get that compound shape, we need to perform some shrinking here. So as we get a tuck to develop in the paper, that's going to signify a shrink. So we'll just keep doing that and kind of coming over, and there's a little bit of loose paper up in here, and as we pull perpendicular to that, it pulls that down and it tightens everything. And at this point, just like with the magnets and the overall layout, I'm trying to get everything evenly spaced, all the tucks in our paper to be approximately the same height and approximately the same distance from one another. It's all about consistency and being even. We could pull all of this together in one shrink in the middle, but that's not how the panel would be. There would be a big knot in it. So everything's going to be kind of divided evenly, and we'll put an even amount of shrinks where the shape is, and our panel will come out even and smooth. So we'll just continue working down, and again, I'm pulling perpendicular kind of to the shape of the quarter at this point, and we'll get into more of clarifying what that is here in a few minutes. So again, you can see all this loose paper there, and as I kind of just pull down and tighten that up, you can see these tucks just kind of form. and there'll be like a weird little triangular diamond pattern in it. That's okay. That just shows you that it's going to need a shrink there. Again, see all that loose paper? As we kind of come around, it'll pull that nice and tight. And here there's some bunching, so what I'll do is I'll come in and just move that magnet around a little bit, wiggle the paper, and try to get it back. Because if you notice, I want all of my tucks to be parallel to one another and kind of perpendicular to that shape. We don't want them angled this way, or like this, or like that. We want them all perpendicular, because if you shrink in that direction, it's going to pull the material in that direction, which is not what you want. So here, I can feel through the paper, we're at the bottom where the belt line comes around. So we only need that one little magnet there, because there is a short little flat section there. And here is where the wheel well is. So this looseness is okay, because that's not even going to be into our pattern. So here I'm just going to kind of make sure everything's nice and straight and tight. And here I kind of adjust the magnets. And here you can see that I've spaced them kind of funny. So I'll just come in and I'll scoot it over. Try to make everything as consistent as we can. So now we have our paper laid out pretty close to what we need. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to take this razor blade. It's always good to have a nice sharp razor blade. And I'm just going to cut some of this loose material out of the wheel well and just kind of trim the fat around the edges, just because it's in the way and it could give us a false reading. So I'm just going to trim this kind of heavy and get rid of a bunch of the extra paper. So now with the paper trimmed, just a good idea to come back and make sure nothing really moved around too crazy from cutting. Just adjust as need be. And we'll throw a few more magnets on here just for good measure. I left this little bit up here because it's really not doing anything. Since it's just mostly flat, it's not going to give us any false readings. So here is just the pattern itself. We have no information to what the pattern is, what it does, or where any of our shape is. But it's the start of our roadmap. We have a basic idea of what needs to happen. So the next step is to lay out all our notes on the pattern. And what I like to use to get that started is this was a carpenter's pencil that I kind of cut down, and then I shaved off part of the wood to get down to the graphite. And that'll let us trace edges. My friend in Australia just sent me these, they're marking builder's pencils that they use in Australia, and it's solid graphite. So I'm going to try these here in the future, and I'm really excited about it because then I don't have to waste all the time grinding and sanding to get to a little bit of graphite in the middle, because the whole thing is made of it. But for this video, I'll use my pencil just because I know how it's going to react. So the first thing we're going to do is, if you look at the pattern in the paper and kind of where the tucks stop, that's going to be what's called a light line. And that's going to be where the shaping starts. And if you look at a car that's in paint or has a reflective surface, a light line is exactly what it sounds like. It's where the light starts to bend or be manipulated. So just by looking at the pattern in the paper and where our tucks stop, our light line is approximately here. So I'll scoot this magnet up just to kind of get it in line with where our light line needs to be. But to mark that on the pattern, what I do is I kind of take our pencil and I hold it kind of at a 45-degree angle, and I just lightly drag it along where our tucks where our tucks kind of end and the pattern ends, and that gives us a light reading of where our light line is. So light lines can be manipulated a little bit. So it's kind of a fat line, so I'm going to come in with a blue Sharpie, and I'm just going to put a couple dotted lines in the center of where that note line was. And then what we can do, I like to use a lot of tape to lay things out just because it's quick and easy and gives us a nice edge. So I'm going to use the tape very lightly. And I'm just going to kind of take the average of those marks we put. So now we have a nice clean line, and I'm just going to use the edge of this tape as a guide for my marker. So there's our light line. And then, since we didn't stick the tape too hard, we can just peel that back off, and it doesn't affect the pattern at all. So then I'll come in and I'll label this so I know what it is. Whether that be in 2 hours from now or 2 days from now, I'll know what all these notes mean because I've made marks. So from there, we know where our light line is, and these are our shrink marks, which we've already noted. So we can come in and we can put a line down. Again, this needs to be perpendicular to what is now our light line, which is what I was talking about before. This overall shape in the panel is going to follow what our light line is, and our light line will follow the shape. So they work together. So it needs to be perpendicular to our light line. So I'm just kind of eyeballing up, and we'll come back and clean that up with a straight edge later. And I'm going to go ahead and label those SH for shrink. And if you're doing a panel that has a lot of shrinks and stretches in different areas, labeling everything is key. If not, you'll kind of forget what you're doing and where it needs to be. So from there, I can take our pencil again, and I can come up and we'll mark the edge. So this is the inside edge of the body line here where it turns over to meet the wheel well. So I'm just going to mark the edge of this for now. And we'll go all the way around, mark all of our edges, and I'll come back and we'll mark the inside of our bead profile there. All right, so it's a good idea if you have some radius gauges. If not, you can get these. These came from Tin Man's Garage. There's a bunch of suppliers that sell them, so just shop around and you can find them. But we need to know what this radius is. You can kind of guess at it or fit it to the car and creep up on it, but it's a good idea to have the information if you have the tools to get there. So what it is it has like a 12-inch radius cut here, 6, 4, 3, 2. It's got a bunch of them, and you can get different radii on them. Like some will be even, some will be odd. So what we're going to do is we're just going to test fit this radius gauge up to our pattern and up to the quarter. So we know our shrink marks are going to be here. So to clean the pattern up, I try not to put it on where my shrink mark is, just due to not having too much going on in the same area. So we're going to start at the top, because a lot of times the radius will change as you go throughout. So we'll just kind of come up and kind of check it. And you want to find one that fits the radius nice and even with no light coming through, other than if there's damage to the panel, and that's where you kind of have to interpret. So this, a number 6 fits really nice. So I'm going to come in here, I'm just going to mark on the back side of that, and I'm going to write 6-inch R for 6-inch radius. And that goes from here at the edge up to our light line. So then I'll move down a little bit, and I'm going to check it again. And this, a 6, also fits nice. So I'm going to do the same thing. Six-inch R. So you don't have to do this every inch, every 2 inches. It depends on the part, but as it comes down and gets tighter, we're going to know that changes a little bit. So like here, even down this way is still a 6. So again, I'll mark it and label it. So here this gets a little bit tighter. It's tighter than a 6, but not as tight as a 4. I don't have one with a 5 on it. So I'm just kind of using a little logic here that if it's not a 6 and it's not a 4, it's got to be around 5 somewhere. So I'm just going to, again, mark it. I'm going to do 5-inch plus or minus R. And that will be when I test fit it to the car and make sure everything looks right. So that's kind of how I do that process. And then the other big thing is you want to make notes where you need extra material. So there is a flange that breaks under here and a flange that breaks over here. So we'll take our steel rule and I'll measure that. And that's roughly a 3/4 inch flange. So then we will come up and I'm going to make a note to add 3/4 of an inch for the flange. Same thing down here. And if you measure it out and it's an inch, add an inch. If it's 2 inches, add 2 inches. So here, when I do the wheel well, it has to be made in its separate piece. But I never want to edge weld anything. So I'm also going to add 3/4 of an inch here to turn that edge inward. And then I can put the weld seam about 3/4 of an inch inside the wheel well. So here in this low crown area, again, you can use your radius gauge, which is going to get you close. I prefer to use sweeps if this needs to be super accurate. A lot of people don't have access to sweeps. So you can check it with your radius gauge. So looking at it in a few different spots, it's roughly a 36-inch radius this way. So we'll put a 36-inch R this way and this way. So this is also roughly 36. On some of these older panels, it's hard to tell because there's been so much damage over the years. So we're just doing the best we can with the information and the tools we have. And if you want, you could even come up here, because this isn't flat straight into a 6. So if you're worried about your blend area, you can come in and check it. And this is roughly a 12. So again, we could come up here, and come up here. And this is a 12-inch radius blend. 12-inch radius blend. And what that'll do is that'll go from our 6 blended into a 12 and kind of start blending out into that 36 this direction and that lower crown this direction, which from experience it's probably going to be around a 40 to a 48 radius this direction. So that is our basic paper pattern. And what I will do, just to show you, since I'm not ready to make the actual part yet, is I will just unmagnet this, And we'll take our steel rule here. I'll kind of pull this, just pull that up here loosely. And we can lay out our shrink lines. All right, then we can just stick this back on for now. And this is the good thing about a paper pattern, because then you can come back and you can check our edge line. You know, we can line our edge right back up here and kind of pull all our shrinks back out and make sure everything lines back up as it should. So you can check everything multiple times and to ensure that it's right. So this is a basic paper pattern. I do this on every sheet metal part I make, whether it be a floor, a firewall, a fender, a quarter panel, a roof insert, you know, just a little patch panel or a full piece. It's a good practice to be in to ensure that you're accurately going to make your part. Because if you had to just guess on all of this information, it would be really tough. So at least now we have an accurate map and an accurate pattern to be able to accurately create our part. So I'll move the camera and I'll kind of do a close-up on all this information. All right, thanks everybody for watching the video, and please head on down to the comment section and leave me a comment on what you thought of the video. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your friends, don't tell your friends, whatever you want to do. So I really appreciate you guys watching, and again, head down to the comment section, let me know what you think, and we'll catch you on the next video.